thanks for that introduction. I've just died on the spot as you read that out. Unfortunately, my colleague Kaylee Daffin that was going to be presenting today is ill, so her stand-in is the very good-looking Ian Jepp. Ian's our technical director at WickedWeb. Well, thanks for joining us. What I want to do today is share our experience of working with one of our clients. In this case, it's Wagamama's, and how we've embraced Sitecore as a platform and helped work collaboratively with a client to taking them towards global digital success. As an intro to the discussion, I'd like to just show you a quick video which will set the tone for what we're talking about.
As Wagamama's global digital marketing agency, our strategy was to increase brand awareness on both a global and local level, exciting, engaging and educating customers all over the world. With SEO, social media integration and scalability in mind, we worked with Wagamama to devise a strategy that really brought the brand to life online and positioned them as market leaders in a really innovative and inspiring way.
The website has been designed to reflect the freshness of the food and the in-store dining experience online, using a combination of uncluttered, unfussy layouts which allow the high-quality imagery of food and restaurants to shine. The site is designed with best practice and responsiveness in mind, reacting to various devices from PC to tablet to smartphone. Wagamama fans are now able to explore new dishes, order takeaways and check the nutritional value of each course, all within the accessible, innovatively designed website.
Our aim was to provide a robust front-end architecture to enable content delivery seamlessly on a wide range of devices. We created a consistent architecture able to integrate ever-changing third-party systems and territory-specific. Our data model is flexible enough to cope with the complexity of the Wagamama business, accommodating the client's needs within the Sitecore CMS.
So looking at our brief, what it was that the client was asking us to address with them. Wagamama had an application that was running for about 14 years that was various different evolutions and bolt-ons. And the first part of the brief was working with a partner that can take on that existing application. And it was a very complex bit of integration. Ian's going to touch on that shortly. They were looking at, once that transition had taken place, ongoing support and maintenance. They were looking for brand guardianship. I've already just briefly mentioned about how important their brand positioning was. So through all of their communications, that's been paramount at forefront of mind with them. When we finished our briefing process, one of the things that really came away was the fact that they wanted to be positioned as one of the leaders in the restaurant industry and being pioneering for how they're using technology going forward. And in line with that, we needed to be mindful that in retail, talking to end consumers, there's lots and lots of campaign work that was going to be part of this exercise. So the existing website application on the bottom right, it was a legacy application. It was slightly old in terms of its brand. And Wagamama really didn't initially, I think, understand how valuable this digital piece of their communications, their marketing communications was. It served a function, but for them, the main driver was revenue. It was about getting bums on seats into their restaurant. And I think as we started to work with them, it was evident that that proposition was changing. So WickedWeb, our first step in terms of addressing this was to define what it was that Wagamama as a business were looking to achieve, and then lead into what the project execution might start to look like. So as an agency, we put a huge amount of emphasis on SEO. We know that a site essentially is only as good as the traffic that's coming to it. So for us, one of the first parts of the investigation was looking at the SEO and looking at how much potential exposure the brand can get in terms of its digital exposure. We could see that there was immediately a big opportunity in terms of SEO. There were presently, at the time, 33,000 searches for restaurants in the UK. A month, 62% of diners search online before they choose. 17% of searchers book online before visiting, and staggeringly for us, Wagamama were only attracting 3.4% of the possible traffic. And that was a really exciting proposition for us. And I think one of the things that we're excited about when working with new clients is where we can add value to what they're doing. And that was one of the key stats that went, hang on, we can really start to grow traffic, engage with that audience, and start to add value to the client's communication. We had to do the traditional competitor review. So we were looking closely at who else was on the online space and who else was competing offline. And there were some quite typical trends that were coming out from all the companies. In terms of the menus, there was a distinct lack of any interactivity in terms of browsing a menu. They were all using traditional PDFs. Nutritional information was also something that was being neglected, possibly because of the high calorific content from competitors. But allergen information is all important. If you are a consumer and you have to be concerned about your allergy intake, it's an important factor. And that was certainly coming out in terms of the business requirements. So we were looking at the audiences and the types of personas that those audiences would take on. And there was a big educational piece to do here. Wagamama have got a very, very loyal customer base. And it was twofold. It was how we can attract new customers into the restaurants and engage online. But how else can we also communicate the breadth of the Wagamama offering to existing consumers? We also, in our research, found out that as an audience, they were really into online space. They want to engage with the brand. They've got a lot of positive things to say about it. And it was evident, and certainly as everyone's aware, mobile and tablet use is becoming more and more popular, and 40% of the customer base were going that way. So the personas were broken down into families, into grey eagles, into youth, into parents, bright sparks. So everyone had their own category. And in terms of going forward with Sitecore, that's one of the great features that is we're able to leverage in terms of its persona and targeted content. So carrying on the journey, we got to stakeholder review stage. We were looking at the audience types. We were looking at what's technically going to be involved in this project and the marketing requirements of the brand as a whole.
So the technical review was an important part of this project. As Stuart had already said, there's 14 years worth of legacy system there. Now, what we can't do is discount that overnight. They got something like 17 individual territories. The system wasn't just an online presence in terms of consumers, it was also a business tool. They'd woven CRM type features into the code base. They've integrated financial reporting and financial management of their franchisee territories into the tool as well. So even though we were going through this technical transition process, maintaining that level of functionality both for the public viewing the site, their target audience, their key target audience, we couldn't also neglect the information and the internal target audiences as well. So on top of that, we also had large amounts of third-party integrations, and we had to be able to cope with integrations in the UK with Micros, who are their EPOS supplier. If anyone that's been there, you see that they can take orders directly at the table. And Micros were also supplying their takeout and delivery functionality, as well as payment providers and the usual plethora of systems. On top of that, you've got traditional CRM activity going on. So all this had to come together as one large technical review. And on top of all that, the requirement was that we had to have a system that was both of high availability, it had to be there when people wanted to see it, and also scalable moving forward. Wagamamas knew that the system was, if you like, on its last legs in terms of the development life cycle and the support that the incumbent agency could deliver on it. But also, as the 14-year-old application was developed, it grew with what we class as technical debt. There is change after change after change introduced to the systems over time. And this technical debt builds up to the point where it holds the organisation back. You can't move forward and do new things or be innovative with the activities you want to do as a marketing organisation, because you're dragging this sort of big weight tied to your leg along with you as you go. So as part of that review, it was acknowledging it, but also working a plan out of how we're going to get rid of that technical debt moving forward.
So at the end of the define stage in terms of the business requirements, we spent this time and we drew out exactly what the business was looking for. As Ian mentioned, this collaboration of data was a big part of their proposition. They called it the big noodle. But it's where all this data was essentially coming together in one place to try and provide as a consistent customer experience as possible, whether that's going into their restaurants, whether that's online, whether you're ordering a takeout on a mobile device. Data was essentially the linchpin behind them as a brand. We also learned that they are a very, very marketing-focused brand. As I said already, they value their customer base enormously, and as we started working with them, it was evident they didn't want to get involved with social media and start bending their consumers' views on what they were like as a brand. They wanted the consumers to enjoy the wagamama experience and self-communicate that amongst their own audience. I think one of the other things that they found with their legacy application was that there was a constant no. They wanted to do something. They wanted to run a campaign. They wanted to reach out to more audiences. And there was a familiar no, we can't do that because. And that was one of the key things that we learned within that business requirement stage. So having completed the business requirements, we then looked at, right, what does the actual project need? What are the project requirements? And this is, as an approach, quite a unique way of working. A lot of clients come to us saying, this is what we need, this is exactly what we want to do, can you guys go off and do it? And in this process, Wagamama were very receptive to going, well, we actually don't really know what we need yet. We think we've got a good idea. And the truth is, you guys at WickedWeb, you probably don't know what you need because you've just started, what we need because you've just started working with us. So let's actually start defining the business objectives. And on the back of that, we'll have a series of outputs which we can then run into, right, this is what the project needs going forward. So in terms of the project requirements, again, I mentioned SEO. We realised that optimised content structure was going to be key. So working that content around good IA, improved keyword targeting. We knew that because of their franchise model, international reach, it needed to be a global SEO strategy. We were looking at geo-targeting. And as well as just typical location, it was evident that food types needed to play a bigger part in their proposition. So in terms of breaking that down into user stories and how user journeys were going to be approached, we said to consider mobile, CRM, e-commerce, takeout, integration, nutritional values, restaurant finders, and the franchise model was playing a really key factor. The franchise model we're using online to manage assets in terms of the business, to communicate out daily to their restaurant managers, to facilitate group bookings within the restaurants. So all of this was really starting to come together. Content, we needed new food imagery, we needed new brand imagery, we needed new restaurant imagery, we needed copywriting that could address the SEO requirements, the usability requirements, and in terms of their brand, getting the tone of voice absolutely right. So a challenge ahead. The output of that, understanding exactly what it was that the project required, was that we had identified that Sitecore was the platform of choice for Wagamamas. And I think we're proud to work with them in going, we've gone through the right due diligence process and looking at what is that the business needs, what is it that the project needs, right, we've concluded the same things. And I say in our experience, the best way to do that is in collaboration with clients and agency. One of the other key factors there was about, with the choice of Sitecore, we knew from experience that Wagamamas could never stop improving their communications. There was never going to be a full stop that they'd experienced previously. And the ability to personalise content was going to be a natural extension of the way that they were already communicating with their audience in a conversational and friendly manner. So step one, we've done the define. Step two, let's designing the solution for them. So in terms of SEO, back to the SEO, it's to boost brand awareness. We needed more members. We were looking at increasing online bookings. We needed to support campaigns both online and offline. We need to look at the user experience. How are these consumers going to be using the actual website, both UK and internationally? We need to look at the sitemap, the taxonomy of information, accessibility testing, usability testing, and the outputs of all that was the correct functional requirement. In terms of the brand and the design style, I've mentioned about how important their consumer base was to them, and some of the key words that our creative team at WickedWeb had to work on were the idea of it being a progressive, friendly, honest was one of their core brand values. Cool, they're one of the cool brands, they have been for a few years now. Simple, it's the new design, new user journeys needed to be simple and accommodating. In the video, you saw some snapshots of the wagamama website, and this is essentially how we started to evolve that design in terms of a desktop view. So we were looking for full browser capability in terms of imagery. We knew that they had some really strong imagery because we commissioned the photography in terms of it being in restaurant, in food, about its people, and really cool calls to action that could be changed whether a campaign was running or around other seasonal activity. Addressing the needs of finding a restaurant, it's important for us when we're working with clients to make sure that whether we're doing stuff because it's cool, and Wagamamas do stuff just because it's cool, we don't need any ROI on that, but they do need stuff that has ROI and tangible returns. And of course, in terms of restaurant bookings and revenue, that's where the revenue is coming from them. So user journey around how consumers can find their nearest restaurant, how they can make a group booking, very clear and easy interface. 40% was using it mobile. That extended into mobile application, and that in itself has progressed into tablet. And as I can see people using their tablets here now, it's very common and popular as you would expect these days. So a seamless user experience for the consumer on multi-device.
So we had to come up with a solution that was going to try and deliver on these high expectations. And I like to think of Sir Isaac Newton, who once said, "I can see further if I stand on the shoulders of others." So we had an opportunity here. Do we go off and build, like the previous agency did, a technically brilliant solution built on a mountain of custom code written specifically Wagamama, and any change we wanted, Wagamama would have to put a hand in their pocket, drag out more cash, and do the development and pay for all the new changes to the marketplace, etc., that were coming out? No, probably not. This is why we are a partner of Sitecore. So we built on core features from the Sitecore product to glue what was going to be a brand offering together in a technical solution, delivering on CEP, the dynamic content, the email marketing suite, the SES, the Sitecore e-commerce services. All of these core Sitecore features were coming together in order to build upon to deliver the value-added bit, which was the proposition. We knew we had to be focused on the mobile and tablet world. So responsive at the time was relatively new. We were doing it on other projects. We rolled it very much into this project. It allowed Sitecore to be able to be viewed on far more devices in a far more targeted way, but without the need for multi-templated bloat that can ensue. We had to cope with a very engaging user interface. It wasn't tablets, tables of news and the like of a lot of sites. It had to be dynamic, engaging. We knew we had to do integration with lots of third-party systems, as I said before, but we had to surface those in the same brand guardianship manner on the surface of the website. We still had multi-territories to cope with. We had to make sure that the systems that we were creating technically were responding to that user engagement, the complexities of delivering that very specific interface, but not compromise the extensibility of the system so that we could introduce variances for territories, separate integrations for different territories. Each territory might have a different supplier for delivery or takeout, for example. And we also had to still address these business needs from the dashboard provided a dashboard for the internal people, the internal users, to make sure that they could still do their business functions on the system as well.
So we've done the definition, we've designed the solution, it's time to start the delivery of that solution.
Back to me, unfortunately, a very techie drawing here. So basically, what we're talking about here is coming up with a technical architecture. Now, we were partners of Rackspace, who are also here today. We needed to be able to deliver an available system, which means that we have to try and engineer out of it as many points of failure as possible so that when people want to see the website, they can actually get to it. So we were using the scalability features of the CEP and Sitecore itself to allow us to load balance multiple servers to deliver the system, but also leveraging cloud technology in order to allow wagamama to scale the application where needed, to be able to take it from which was going to be a soft launch, I'll come on to this later, a soft launch in the UK, where we were doing a single territory up to 17 territories and cope with the scaling of that over time as more and more territories came on board on the system. So by using cloud technology, we were able to introduce at a keen price point for the end user, for wagamamas, and then scale it over time. So, lots of technical rubbish, but what did that mean for wagamama? Well, it means that we've got a robust delivery, that we've got low levels of technical debt, and this is something that's very important to them because of the experiences they had before with their incumbent agency. Sitecore itself is a brilliant platform for this because it's so extensible, and I think this is the key word for me, is extensible. You don't have to alter the platform in order to do things you want to do with it. With Sitecore, you can extend it and bend it and build upon it in order to deliver the business needs. And it's a toolkit of features that we can use as software developers to be able to deliver on your business goals. Using the hosting, we managed to get high availability, very low single points of failure. And with cloud, scalability. So basically, the platform to launch their new online presence and grow thereafter.
So we opted for a phased rollout, and in Ian's terms, there was a nudge on launch to 1.6 million people for that first phase of rollout. Pleased to say that we had a seamless transition in terms of its legacy SEO performance. As I said earlier, that's something that we put a huge amount of emphasis on to make sure that not only could we retain good levels of traffic, but we could build upon it going forward. And then there was the sensitive case of monitoring, learning, looking at what's going on, looking at what can be refined and evolved. And that leads us into our fourth phase of the project. It's the dry phase. Everything's been delivered now in terms of a first phase rollout, and it's about driving it forward. Since we've launched, we've seen a fairly substantial increase, 22% increase. Non-brand traffic has increased by 40%. Wagamama are using Sitecore to personalise content now, offer a complete user and brand experience. I mentioned the data side of things earlier on, that data's crucial for that. They're able to manage campaigns, manage their own email communications, so really making the most of driving that forward. From our perspective, hopefully it's been useful today to start sharing a current case study of how, as an agency, we work with a client to roll out a project on the Sitecore platform. But I think there's some key lessons that we've learned on this journey and with other clients. And as I said earlier, the first thing is to clearly define what the business objectives are before over-committing. Don't ask your your agencies or your other departments to make a decision that's uninformed. Get the facts, deal in facts, and build from that a case for what the project requirements are going to be. We design the solution to meet those requirements, and to that end, Sitecore is absolutely integral to that integration. All importantly for wagamamas and their audience, we're delivering a solution that's not restrictive. As we mentioned earlier with Sitecore and the way that the site's being built, wagamamas don't need to hear the word no from their agency anymore. We can say yes, how are we going to do that? And in our experience, anything that a client wants to do in terms of it engaging with its audiences, there's probably 10 different ways that a conclusion could be reached. But the successful way is doing that in a collaborative way. And with Sitecore, wagamamas do not have a restriction there now. As we continue to drive them forward into 2013 and beyond, we're confident knowing that the process that we've gone through is the right process, that the platform they're on is the right platform. And they're set to thrive now in the digital landscape going forward. And that was a refreshing aspect for wagamamas in terms of where they'd previously come from.